And today we're going to talk about elections and social media. Now, the election season is once again around the corner. There are going to be assembly elections in the state of Bihar as well as by-polls in several assembly constituencies and a parliamentary constituency as well. Now, these are COVID times. We are in the middle of a pandemic. So in these particular times, the social media and its role becomes really important. Although the social media effect on elections has been quite evident since past few years, but in these elections, it'll be really significant and important to see as to how both the candidates, political parties use social media for their campaigning and how does the public react to that. Also comes in the role of Election Commission of India, who is conducting these elections. We'll try and understand all aspects, and for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests in the studio. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Mr. Akshay Raut, former Director General of the Election Commission of India. We also have with us Ms. Khushbu Jain, advocate and cyber law expert, and we're also joined by Mr. Sanjay Singh, senior journalist, who has been keeping a close watch on the political developments and how elections are contested as well as voted in. Welcome all of you to Rajya Sabha TV, and let me begin with you, Mr. Singh. Let's start by understanding this relationship between elections and social media.
Vishal, election this time around is very unique. In the sense, if you look at Bihar elections in the past, digital media, social media, and whatever was electronic had very small role to play. So to say, I'll not go long into the past, but say last elections, parliamentary elections and assembly elections in Bihar. See, social media largely in India, in terms of election management, means WhatsApp groups. Twitter and Facebook, of course, are there. They're there. But in terms of reach, this WhatsApp groups actually communicate things very faster. What makes the difference? Earlier, it was generally one-way communication prior to advent of social and digital media. Mm-hmm. Now this is a two-way communication. The subaltern people all around have got their voices and they express their voice. The time is very significant here. It communicates messages very fast. But the issue is, how do people actually relate with social media? In the sense, people actually, most of the time, you have made up your mind as to which side you are supporting, which side you are not. In some case, some fence sitters are there. What makes an election in India, even if that color was missing for last several years, or so to say decades, even then there was some color, in the sense you had public rallies, you had people campaigning, you had other forms of small handbills and so on, people making different kind of nukkar sabhas. Those would be missing. And that is replaced by the digital network outreach by political parties and leaders at large. What happens, the people who have larger network and larger ideas in terms of penetration, they get a mileage in that. BJP has started their digital outreach much before anybody thought about it. Prime Minister had several meetings, not actually political, but in terms of government initiatives that he was taking. Then you had Amit Shah holding a virtual rally. And that way it goes on. But what actually makes a difference is that WhatsApp group and how many WhatsApp group one has created and how those groups is able, and leaders there are able to receive the communication or the feedback that is coming through those groups.
Okay. Let me bring in Mr. Raut here. Mr. Raut, the big question here is from the point of view of the Election Commission of India as well, because as Mr. Sanjay Singh is pointing out, and we've seen that how social media, has become a force multiplier in these political contests, specifically electoral contests. So in this situation and in these elections, the forthcoming ones, wherein social media is expected to play a very important role, what is the mechanism out there with the Election Commission of India to go ahead and ensure a free and fair election, because all of us are aware about the menace of fake news as well?
Yeah, Vishal, let me sort out the second part of your question first. I'm not sure if social media is going to play a large role in Bihar elections. I mean, compared to the national penetration of 50+% of internet, Bihar has about 30%. And the smartphone penetration is that or even a little less. So I'm not sure if political parties will really do a lot of wise thing by moving greatly into social media. But yes, because it's a pandemic affected election and virtual campaigning is one of the ways that they have to fall back on. So social media is likely to have a little larger role. In fact, in terms of mass media connectivity also, Bihar is not very high up among the states. That's one. So let's not put too many eggs in that basket of social media.
Okay.
Yes, it has a role. And then I have gone through many studies about the voting behavior that social media orchestrates. I think social media is just a fashion and style, and people want to connect. But as Sanjay ji rightly said, people have made up their minds for other reasons, and maybe political competition is one of them, major one among them. But social media, okay, it's a way of life. They like to be connected if they can. But in terms of voting behavior, global suggestions are that doesn't determine much. But to the most important first question of yours, Vishal, about election management. Election management had a very interesting relation with media and social media. Media is a natural ally. In election time, a lot of things to be informed to the electorate. We are the largest electorate of the world. In fact, many countries put together. I don't have to call about the scale of the elections in India, and particularly in Bihar, it is already 7.3 crore electorate. Okay. This is the largest election after the pandemic came in the world anywhere. So to connect to these people, tell them what, when, and where of polling, media is a natural ally of election management. And social media gave hope a few decades back when it came. Election management people thought that they can easily connect to millions and millions of people. But soon, this type of hope became fear. Because I don't have to tell you, even globally, the social media measures are being called to legislative committees, to whether it is Facebook or Google. They are being asked to explain why certain wrong things are happening in our country. Even relating to COVID-19, there is plenty of bad social media. The footprint is so little. Election expenditure control finds it very challenging to measure the footprints and cost it. That is why during the last elections, not only there could be head posts, there could be fake news, but Election Commission has become very serious about it. More so during the last national election 2019, in which the Commission was forced to almost extract from these platforms a code of ethics. But code of ethics is a code of ethics. Model code of conduct is there, which is very salutary and which has a lot of impact on political parties and process. But still, many times it is the deviance is not able to be made accountable, to be actioned upon. Mm-hmm. So now the social media measures have taken a voluntary ethics that they will not do X things, they will not do Y things, they will take their political advertisement as separate from other social media posts. They will take the contents of the election commission. They will also do fact checks. They will do immediate withdrawal of any wrong thing. But as in the last election announcement, which we just now referred to, Election Commission has made it clear that they will do a hot pursuit if things go to that extent that they find that election process is being vitiated. Where else social media is doing, whether in Bollywood, property market, or elsewhere, that's none of the business of election management. Okay. But to the extent the vitiation of the level playing field, I'm sure that election management in Bihar is going to really tighten its screw on the social media.
Okay, but Mr. Raut, you spoke about that how Election Commission said that they will pursue vigorously if at all there is some sort of wrong play as far as use of social media is concerned. One question here I want to ask you is, does the MCC has enough provisions? Is the Election Commission, in terms of powers it has, adequately equipped to deal with these, new age changes in terms of social media and the challenges which it brings with it?
Like the government of the day or like other sectors in the society, generally Election Commission would tend to believe that self-regulation is the best regulation for media, including social media. It takes technically social media as one of the electronic media. That is why it says that if electronic media is subjected to the MCMC, Media Certification Committee and Monitoring Committee, from which all electronic media has to take clearance before it puts out a political advertisement. So also social media. So they have put social media in the bracket of electronic media. But as you know, electronic media is also not sort of fully controlled or regulated. There is a section 126 which puts a shackle on any types of election related broadcast by electronic media, also by social media 48 hours before the close of the election. So those will apply. And MCC has certain provisions which relate to media behavior. There is another media code also, I mean a special media code which Election Commission circulates. And they also relate to PCI. They also relate to the New Broadcasters Association. They depend on this. Now, for social media, they are interacting with their intermediaries and associations. And particularly for the last few years, and more remarkably, during the last general election 2019. And it has given some results, I must tell you, because everyone has become conscious. There are fact checkers, there are violation checkers in the social media platforms. But in its own arrangement, Election Commission of India keeps an eagle's eye on the whole thing. They have a committee which will always change and scan every part of the social media to find if there is anything negative which could vitiate the process, cause unrest, disturb harmony, and cause a lot of difficulties for the mutual elections and candidates. So this is on, and I think that type of scrutiny has to be there all the time.
Okay. Khushbu, your views on these two aspects, as Mr. Raut is pointing out. One, obviously, the provisions which are there in the law as well as the powers with the Election Commission, because social media, all of us know, is, they're all dynamic platforms and things change very quickly out there as well. And that compounding effect is also there. Also, the point which Mr. Raut is making, that let's not be ahead of our times. Perhaps in these elections in that particular state of Bihar, we might not see too much penetration as far as social media is concerned. Do you agree?
No, I would not agree on that, because with the kind of year we are facing and the kind of increase on social media platforms or increase on digital platforms, that has almost been more than it has increased. There is an increase of almost 300 to 400%, whereas your screen time is concerned. So looking at the kind of way we have shifted more towards the digital platforms for every news and every reliability with lockdown in place, with work from home, I would not agree with that completely, because I think all of us have seen that what kind of impact Cambridge Analytica had when it comes to changing the mindset or moving the mindset of voter base is concerned. At the same time, I would say that the lack of any clear data protection framework. We do have a data protection bill pending after K. Puttaswamy and Justice Sri Krishna's committee. The framework is pending, and the recent introduction of the framework by Niti Aayog in Rajya Sabha, which was the DEPA. So looking at lack of this data protection framework as of now, and which allows unrestricted access to data, personal data. Now, this personal data can be manipulated by political agents. This can be manipulated by different entities to spread targeted disinformations, to have your own propaganda. So, looking at that limited applicability of laws when it comes to data protection bill, when it comes to bringing in data brokers in the market, who are using your personal data at a massive scale, and the purpose and ambiguity space, whereas law is concerned over there. And at the same time, technology, which makes it ambiguous for anybody to understand. Looking at that aspect, I would say that there's a need for that framework to come. At the same time, I would say that Election Commission or the laws which are in place, yes, they do talk about, I think Sir was very specifically talking about non-campaigning period, of 48 hours prior to the election, to monitor fake news. Yes, there has been instances where, self-regulated and censorship of illegal content on social media platform, whereas elections are concerned, are being issued by the commission very specifically. The entities, the platforms have to have their self-regulation and censorship. But at the same time, looking at the kind of technology we are talking about, I would say that it's not yet equipped to deal with such digital propaganda as of now. It's not about the laws only, but it's about the enforceability of the law also. So looking at that aspect, I feel there is a scope of regulated, scope of law, and at the same time scope of there's a huge scope, whereas whereas applicability of these laws and enforceability of these laws is concerned, and at the same time we need to have more clear regulation whereas content is concerned, where content is vague, whereas absence of any clear legal basis is concerned, whereas amplification of any certain specific news is concerned, that in what manner it is being amplified. We are seeing bots in place, the way news form opinions. Yes, I would say I would rest on that.
Okay. Mr. Sanjay, the penetration of social media or the impact of social media on elections obviously can vary depending upon various factors. But this particular aspect, as both Mr. Raut and Khushbu is pointing out, do you think that this combination of the self-regulation by the social media platforms, the big ones, and the provisions in the MCC or the powers of the Election Commission, is this a good enough combination to deal with the kind of challenges which we might be facing in these elections or in the future ones, as well as far as social media's impact on election is concerned?
Vishal, there is no self-regulation on social media. I'm sorry, not to my understanding.
But some platforms have said that they will regulate themselves.
The bigger platforms, they say that they have put in fact checkers or people who actually are going to censor or do that censoring thing. Their credentials by itself is questionable. So let us leave that part. And besides, if you put up something and something is really obnoxious, it takes a great deal of time to take that down. Until then, the damage has been done. So generally, that social self-regulation is not there, least of all on WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
That is also there is bit of debate on kind of agenda or motivated things that are there. That's a separate debate. I would take forward what Akshay was saying. Look, we shall differentiate between the outreach of social media in these elections. Of course, this is going to be a watershed election in terms of the way digital media is going to play a role, because that also has become a means of actual main campaigning, the tool of main campaign. It was a subsidiary in last any of the election. Social media was a subsidiary, or digital platforms were subsidiary. This time around, that is the main platform through which you are reaching out to the people. Parties, of course, will make their own attempts. The part that how much it plays on psyche of the voter, that's a different question altogether. The part it plays on psyche of the voter, I agree with Akshayji, because that part, if that had been the case, Congress today, lately, as the Congress has picked up and so many other anti-Modi forces have picked up, they would have been assured of any victory in assembly, local and parliamentary. If you have seen leadership of Congress party, they are focused only on Twitter and so many hashtags, handles that are hashtags, promotions that are coming every day. So you see same set of people actually going there. So that part is actually very amplified. The issue is you cannot win a war, electoral war, with social media unless you have a vast army of foot soldiers, you have strong delivery mechanism, you have strong mechanism, communication mechanism, who people believe in terms of leadership structure, and also your kind of the way you manage your elections, ultimately the way you put up your candidates, the way you stitch up alliances, and the way you go forward in last 40, 50 days, and prior to that, your own history. The elections are not fought and won in last 50 days. It's a long drawn process. Yes, that final push, that last 5, 10 overs in limited over match, that part is the election. These 30, 35 days election time is there. In terms of the first thing that I was talking about, in terms of the outreach, this is going to be a watershed election whereby new dimensions may be created for coming elections, because leaders actually, they also get fatigued reaching out to people. A senior leader, a top leader would travel crisscross the whole state, 5-10 rallies across the day, through the day. And also they have to look for election management, communicating to cadre, getting the feedback. So if this goes effectively, then elections next elections forward, that part could be minimized. I'm not sure people actually want to see physical presence of the leader. In one of those programs, Akshay was saying physical versus virtual. So that physical versus virtual, the coming time, a month downwards, say post November 10, we'll be analyzing how much the physical versus actual this contest or say a situation has led us to.
Okay. Okay. Obviously, it's going to be really, really interesting to see the kind of changes which might be there as far as, the way of campaign is concerned, the way candidates and the political parties go ahead and try and convince the voters, and also this communication between the electorate and the candidates as well. But Mr. Raut, I'd like to bring you in here on this, thread of what needs to be done in terms of ensuring free and fair election, with this another element coming in. And as Mr. Sanjay was pointing out, this whole idea of bigger social media platforms self-regulating themselves doesn't seem to be a really, really very, strong one there.
Yeah, we can't be that much pessimistic about self-regulation. I think all the people who deal with media and practitioners of media, including Sanjay ji, he himself is an eminent journalist. I think everyone always believes that no one should regulate them; they should regulate themselves. But okay, that's the point which has been discussed already. I would not go to that. I would go to something. Do you remember, Vishal, that about 10 years back there was a huge talk about paid news, right? Because I had occasion to handle it. Paid news was generally a process in the print media. Also, it was getting into electronic media to some extent. Social media, when it appeared, it changed the scenario altogether. But then Election Commission, everyone was talking to paid news because there was only circumstantial evidence was there, no clinching evidence that someone has done paid